John Gowdy is an emeritus professor at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute there in the economics department. I had the really good fortune of starting my career post-PhD in the econ department with John, where we started the world's first PhD program in ecological economics. He's been a good friend, a colleague, and a mentor ever since. And John is going to give us some reflections on a lot of work and a lot of thinking he's been doing through the years on the relevance of behavioral economics. John, take it away.
Okay, I've got just sort of a shotgun approach here to a lot of things. So I'll try to keep it coherent. There's this prevailing belief that's bothered me for a long time, and this has a lot to do with altruism and human nature. And I'll read this quote by E.O. Wilson. The idea is sort of our primitive emotions are holding us back. We have created a Star Wars civilization with Stone Age emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. We thrash about. We're terribly confused by the mere fact of our existence and a danger to ourselves and to the rest of life. Okay, this is a good quote, and I've actually used this in articles, but the thing that bothers about it, sort of like the word Stone Age emotions and godlike technology. And there's a lot of stuff being written in behavioral economics. It sort of blames the problem on human nature. So I'm going to argue that it's not human nature that's the problem. It's really the system, economic and social system that we stumbled into. Okay, yeah, so why is this important? Human nature, human behavior, cultural beliefs should be seen in evolutionary and social context. And it's not human nature to be greedy, hierarchical, and exploitative. Dominant belief systems come largely out of the economic base, the way people make a living. This is not a new idea. This is a quote by Marx. The mode of production of material life conditions the general process of social, political, and intellectual life. It is not the consciousness of men that determines their existence, but their social existence that determines their consciousness. So I think this is sort of the missing piece in behavioral economics that some, at least the top people that have established the field have neglected. And just to give a couple of examples, Richard Thaler, who's done, again, he's tremendous work in moving the economics profession beyond the rational actor model. And this is a comment on his work pulled from a newspaper review on obesity. Richard Thaler's work is important for understanding obesity precisely because he brought the discipline of an economist to understanding why people make seemingly irrational choices. Again, continuing the quote, in the popular imagination, obesity is a failure of self-control. But Thaler's walk offers a sharp contrast. Self-control is, in fact, unusual. That's because most people make daily lifestyle choices based on what's easiest and what's most immediately pleasing. Okay, one thing that's wrong with this is obviously not sharp contrast. I mean, this is the same thing. Obesity is being a failure of self-control. But it's an important point, but it really begs the question. Now, for example, why is the obesity epidemic so recent? And this shows, again, just since 1980 or so, obesity has taken off. So, why in this? Human nature didn't change in the last, 40 years or so. People were presumably just as irrational then as they are now. So why did this happen? And to answer that, you have to look at sort of the larger social context. The subsidization of the sugar industry, for example, proliferation of fast food restaurants. There's studies that have shown the closer you live to a fast food restaurant, the more likely you are to be obese. So the whole notion of sort of this top-down behavioral change, I think, is missing. And you see the same thing in addiction. Okay, addiction, sure, in some simple level, it's a choice, but in some sense, it's not. Addiction has been pushed by the opiate, pushed by the pharmaceutical industry and so on. So you have to get away from sort of this everything is individual choice perspective. Okay, another thing, sort of limitations of this, blaming it on individuals. Well, Why isn't human society sustainable? This is what I've been doing most of my writing on lately. It's a quote by William Rece, who I greatly respect as an ecological economist. To begin answering this question, we need to look beyond conventional explanations. Scientific uncertainty, social inertia, lack of political will, resistance by vested interests, and so on, to what might be the root cause of the conundrum, human nature itself. Okay, that's why we're over-exploiting nature and humans and all that. Another quote by David Pollard: we humans have not changed and cannot change what we are, what we do, how we behave, or what we value. We are doomed by the coding in our DNA to continue along our inexorable path of self-destruction and to inflict large-scale but ultimately transitory damage on the planet in the process. And I think you can say this is almost the prevailing view among environmentalists. And I think it's obviously not true. There's a lot of recent evidence indicating that it's not human nature itself. Homo sapiens, we've been on the planet for more than 300,000 years, according to the latest dating of fossils. For 98% of that time, more is direct flows of nature from the environment. We lived in small face-to-face communities that were egalitarian. Altruism is prevalent in nature. And again, there's all kinds of interesting stuff on this coming out. I mean, almost every issue now of Science and Nature has something on this. And I think most of you, or maybe a lot of you, have seen this picture. This is a biologist who was studying marsh ecosystems in Malaysia, and he got stuck, and this orangutan came over to help him out. No reason, doesn't make him any more fit. It's not selfish genes. So most human cultures have been sustainable. The Khoisan people of southern Africa, the San or Bushmen, have continuously inhabited that habitat for something like 150,000 years. Again, a recent article in Science found this. The Homo erectus Acheulean hand axe tradition flourished for about 1.5 million years. This is an identifiable technology, and a very sophisticated, crafted hand axe. It's identifiable over this long time period. Neanderthal Mousterian culture lasted 300,000 years. There's new evidence from Neanderthal fossils also of altruism in these cultures. They found Neanderthal skeletons of Neanderthal individuals that were incapable of taking care of themselves. There's one individual that was blind and probably crippled, had to be carried around, had to be taken care of, by this highly mobile people for at least 2 years. Even after agriculture, many small-scale human societies lived in harmony with nature, with stable populations and sustainable resource use. So I think the bottom line, humans are capable of almost any type of behavior depending on the underlying economic and institutional structures. So Pogo was wrong, I think. The enemy is not us, but rather the socioeconomic superorganism that we've stumbled into. Blaming human nature for the current assault on the natural world is really a defeatist position. If you just throw up your hands and say, well, it's human nature, there's nothing we can do, then, why go on? It's an apolitical, easy way out that blames humans as individuals, regardless of cultural context, and precludes, a deeper understanding and fundamental structural change of the system. There's a really interesting study done by an anthropologist, Joseph Henrich, a few years ago, and published in Behavioral and Brain Sciences. And he talked about weird societies, Western industrial, educated, developed, and developed. And he compared this culture most of us live in, with traditional cultures around the world. And the values of people like us are really weird in every sense of the term. I mean, we're outliers in terms of selfishness, in terms of the downplaying altruism and cooperation, and so on. So again, I think we have to recognize the conflict between the economic system and what might be this underlying human nature, altruism, and so on, and work at encourage policies that sort of that might undermine that. Recognize the conflict and institute policies based on what makes us human. How do we help individuals, not the economy? And there is a conflict, and we can do that. And again, I'm writing a book on this, and sort of the last chapter, or second to last chapter, what we can do. Two broad things. One is just to institute a progressive agenda, universal health care, education, and so on, guaranteed income, and more importantly, a guaranteed maximum income. If you make people more secure economically, then they're more likely to be altruistic, they're more likely to help others. And it might be, again, the first step in moving toward a real sustainable economy. The other thing is to protect the natural world. I mean, I'm really an enthusiastic supporter of rewilding and land trust. E.L. Wilson's written a book about this called Half Earth. So again, if you say it's human nature, there's really nothing to be done. And I think that's something to watch out for in behavioral economics. And I'm done.
Great. Thank you, John. Applause from everybody.